his trail arm or his right arm went from this state to this state. So when it works internal, so internal meaning it's facing a bit more inward, to external, starting to face a little bit more outward. So hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be taking you through how to shallow the club more appropriately. It's not a singular position, in my belief, that shallows the golf club and allows the mass of the club to fall behind you, helping you make better contact and swing it from the inside. It's actually multiple movements that help make this up. And today I want to take you through some of those movements. So let's get into it. So you may have seen on my social media that I posted one of my students and mentioned that there are many ways to shallow a golf club. I don't believe it's always just a single movement that helps shallow the club. And in this video, you can see that there are three things he is doing. He is using his wrists, using his forearms, and using his arms in a different way, and I just want to talk about them. So one of the first shallowing mechanisms is the wrist conditions, actually allowing the wrist to work in a certain way, which will help you lay the shaft down. So for me, as a player moves to the top, their wrists can work towards this flex state, towards this state where the right wrist starts to lay back on itself. And you'll see there, if I allow my right wrist to bend more this way in transition and allow it to lay backwards, so you can see me bending my wrist back there, you can see how the club starts to move more behind me. Now, what's important to recognize is when we use that type of shallowing mechanism, there is a chance that the club face will play more open. So there's a little bit more that goes with that. So as we start to work to the top and that right wrist starts to lay down, if you can see my palm is more in the air here, you can see that sometimes the face plays a little bit more open. So it's actually quite important that as you allow that movement to happen, you almost twist your wrist back down again, so twisting them back round to the left. So as it lays down, I'm almost turning my knuckles down at the same time. And from there, you can see how the club then goes behind me and starts closing a little bit more. And from here, you could just rotate through the ball. And a good practice for that is I'm quite into stopping and stop-start drills, so we call them freezer drills. So where I'd go to the top, perhaps figure some stuff out and feel it, and then rotate through, feeling it. Now, you'll notice that I've hit that a little bit left. It's not an exercise for strike, and it's certainly not one where I'm paying much attention. What I'm trying to do here is figure out what that feels like. So as I work to the top, I'm allowing my wrist to then lay down, perhaps shutting the face as I do that, and then working through and figuring some bits out. So you can see there another poor contact, but just figuring that stuff out, and hopefully you saw that club lay down behind me a little bit. Something to add on to that as well is to make sure that I don't make my wrist go straight into that state. So I'm not trying to lay my wrist back straight away. It has to be flowing into that state. So for example, if you just try and work straight into that, you'll see I pull the club a little bit behind me and potentially a little bit closed, whereas I'm still looking for the wrist to change direction slightly. So it would move to the top, then in transition it starts to lay backwards a little bit. And also, I generally think that laying down is a good move as well, because if I'm looking at impact conditions, I want some shaft lean. And actually, if I hinge my wrist back on itself, you can see there how that can potentially do that, providing I've got my knuckles into a good state. So one more time, if I just work that gently to the top and then in transition allow that to lay down, hopefully I can piece it all together and hit a slightly better golf shot. Now again, there are multiple pieces happening in the golf swing to allow the shaft to lay down. So yes, that was one piece, but I generally see that that is coupled with some other pieces. And for me, those pieces that you saw from my player were, as he went to the top, his trail arm or his right arm went from this state to this state. So when it works internal, so internal meaning it's facing a bit more inward, to external, starting to face a little bit more outward. So from here, the shaft or my right arm feeling like it stays a little bit more on top. And then again in transition, it starts to lay down again. And again, being very mindful of what that can do to the club face, but it is another shallowing mechanism where as I go to the top, my trail arm starts to bend in this manner. Now, quite a nice feeling I found for this with students is either getting them to or pretending that they have a balloon between their arms, okay? So if I had a balloon between my arms and I had a needle sticking out of my right elbow here coming inwards, the goal here would be to, as I work to the top, keeping the balloon between my arms and then popping the balloon with the needle in transition. And straight away, you'll be able to see what that done to the shaft. You can see that as my trail arm started to go this way, the shaft started to lay down. Now, some people, of course, struggle with mobility and that might not be possible. But if I couple my wrists up with that arm position, so if I've got my wrist laying back and I've got my elbow going this way, you can see that encourages it to be super shallow. Now, I don't think that I want it super shallow, but I think it's a really good exercise for feeling how to lay the club down in excess. If you are a player that starts to pull down on the handle and the shaft falls over itself, anything in extremes could be really good for you. So as you move to the top, you may want to feel a nice rotation. As the right wrist lays down, I start to pop that balloon. So you can see there, it's not a singular motion. It is coupled with something else, which brings me on to the third piece that you actually saw my player do. Now, I don't think for a second he consciously does these pieces. Well, in fact, I know he doesn't consciously do these pieces, but when you start to look at his swing, these are pieces that happen as well, which is the third thing that actually happens is as he works to the top, he allows his arms to lower, okay? He allows his right arm to start lowering down. Now, that's the difference. There is not a pulling of the handle, because as I start to yank down on this golf club, it will start to stand up, but it is allowing his arms to drop or lower. It's allowing his left arm to slide down his chest. Now that would be the third and final piece. Now I'm going to perform these in extremes now and you're going to see how shallow this club gets. But again, I think this would be a really good exercise if you was looking for something deliberate or some feel-based stuff. So again, as I work to the top now, allowing the right wrist to lay down, popping the balloon and lowering the arms. You can see how crazy that is. Now, again, I wouldn't necessarily want you to do that, but you can see how there are multiple things going on to allow the club to shallow and stay behind me. And then from there, once we've got the club into a more shallow state, it should be a lot easier to rotate and exit nicely out the other side without feeling like I'm going to pull it or slice it, because what we often see is players get the shaft steepen on end and they still try and rotate, and you can see where that club head ends. Whereas if I can allow the club, my arm to stay more across me, the shaft to be more shallow and the face to be square, rotating still allows the club to come from the inside and from a decent direction, allowing it to hit the ball squarely. So from there, if I start to apply those pieces, or at least feel those pieces now, I should start to hit some nice clean shots. So that one there felt extremely clean. I felt like I just picked that off the surface and I didn't feel stuck at all. I didn't feel cramped. Whereas when the shaft gets quite steep on players, they feel all bunched up through the ball as the club is working quite heavy towards the ground. So I hope this video demonstrated that there are multiple things happening to allow the club to shallow. And I just want to add, these are just a couple of things that are allowing the arms to shallow out, allowing the club to shallow out. There are multiple other things that happen as well. And I will be posting about these shortly. So thanks again for watching. I hope you found it helpful and I'll see you soon.